Hello everyone, this is Nupur Sharma. Previously we discussed about our chapter, that is rulers and buildings. Today we will continue our chapter. Now first we will just see the topics which we have already discussed. Engineering skills and constructions, building temple, mosque and tanks, temple construction in early 11th century, and why were temples targeted. So we have already discussed these points, that what kind of architecture was there in the medieval period and what kind of buildings were made, why the temples were made, the mosques were made, the tanks were made, why the kings used to make all these temples. Not only for worship purpose, but also it used to show their wealth and power, the wealth and power of the kings. And when we come to this point, why these temples were targeted? Because these temples used to show the power and wealth of the kings, that is why when the rulers fight against each other, they used to target these temples, because they used to show the wealth and power of other king. Now today we will be discussing the next 3 points, that is gardens, tombs and forts, region and empire, churches that touches the sky. So these are the remaining 3 topics which we will discuss today. Now under the Mughal, architecture became very complex. If we talk about the time when Babur was there, so Babur was interested in gardens. After Babur, Humayun. During Humayun's reign, nothing much happened, because we have read already about this thing in our previous chapters in the Mughal Empire, that because of the consequences, Humayun kept on running from one place to another. So there was no building construction done in that time. Then came Akbar. During Akbar's reign, administration was very strong. Then Jahangir. Jahangir was interested in art, dance, music, all the art forms. He was interested in all these things. And Shah Jahan. So mainly the construction, the architectural work is done during the Shah Jahan's reign. He was interested in the architecture. So during all these Mughal time, the architecture became very complex. So many forts were built up, so many tombs were built up. So we will read about all these things. Now Babur has written in his autobiography about the gardens which he liked, which he wanted. So we will read about those kind of garden. He wrote about the formal gardens which were placed within rectangular walled enclosure. Formal garden placed within the rectangular wall enclosure and divided into 4 quarters. You can see the picture over here. This was known as the Chahar Bagh. These are the 4 gardens divided into 4 quarters, and they are divided by artificial channels. These were the artificial channels, and between these rivers used to flow, water was there. So this kind of garden was known as the formal garden, Chahar Bagh, which Babur mentioned in his autobiography. Now this is also constructed during the reign of Mughal period. There were tombs, and in those tombs these Chahar Bagh were constructed. These gardens were called the Chahar Bagh, and these are also known as the 4 gardens because of their symmetrical division into quarters. Now beginning with Akbar, some of the Chahar Baghs were constructed during Akbar's reign. Most beautiful Chahar Bagh during Akbar's, Shah Jahan and Jahangir's reign. So many Chahar Bagh were constructed in Delhi, Agra and Kashmir. There were several important architectural innovations during Akbar's reign. For inspiration, Akbar's architectures turned to the tombs of his Central Asian ancestors, Taimur. If we see the tomb of Taimur and the tomb of Humayun. Tomb of Taimur and tomb of Humayun. There are several things which are common. We have discussed this also in the previous chapter. Taimur was ancestors of the Mughal. One was the Mongol, and from the mother side they belong from Mongols, and from the father side they belong from Taimur dynasty. So in the Taimurian dynasty, the tomb of Taimur and tomb of Humayun, there were several things which were in common. That were the dome which was above the tomb, and the gateways, the large gateways which were also known as Pishtaq. So these things were common in both the tombs, the tomb of Taimur and tomb of Humayun. Now, the central towering dome and the tall gateway became important aspect of Mughal architecture. Now, these domes became the important aspects of the Mughal architecture. Later, they built up more building, constructed more buildings with these kind of domes because they became an important aspect later. These were first visible in Humayun's tomb. The tomb was placed in the center of a huge charbagh and built in the tradition known as Eighth Paradise or Hasht Behisht. Now, when the Humayun's tomb was built up, it was built and it was surrounded by the Chahar Bagh. Means at the center was the Humayun's tomb. Suppose this is Humayun's tomb and it is surrounded by the Chahar Bagh. So, like this. So, all around Chahar Baghs were made and in the center Humayun's tomb was constructed. This was the construction of the Humayun's tomb. And this inside this tomb there were 8 paradise, means 8 doors were there. Suppose this is the inside of the tomb, so from inside there were 8 doors. This was known as the 8 paradise or Hasht Behisht. This central hall of Humayun's tomb was surrounded by 8 rooms. These 8 doors go to 8 rooms. So this was known as the 8 paradise. The building was constructed with red sandstones and white marble. Both red sandstones and white marbles were expensive in that time. So this building was constructed with white marbles and red sandstones. Now, it was during Shah Jahan's reign that the different elements of Mughal architecture were found together in a grand harmonious way. His reign witnessed a huge amount of construction activity, especially in Agra and in Delhi. The ceremonial halls of public and private audience, Diwani Khas and Diwani Aam. Diwani Khas and Diwani Aam were the ceremonial hall where the people used to gather together, public or private halls. Now, what was the importance of that hall? These Diwani Khas and Diwani Aam, they were constructed, the construction resembled with the mosque. See, in the previous chapter we have read about, in this chapter also we have read about the construction of the mosque, and in the previous chapter also we have read about that the mosque, the Muslim, they used to pray looking at the west side, and that side is known as the Qibla. So these ceremonial halls, Diwani Khas and Diwani Aam, they were constructed by keeping in view that they resembles the mosque. Now how they resemble the mosque? See, they are placed within a large courtyard, and these courts were also described as Chehil Satun or 40 pillared halls. The hall was very big and it stand on 40 pillars hall. Shah Jahan's audience hall were especially constructed to resemble the mosque. The pedestal on which his throne was placed was frequently described as the Qibla. Now, suppose this is the hall. This is the pedestal where the king, the ruler will sit, and here will be the audience. So, the audience will face the king. So, this was placed in the west side and this was known as the Qibla. That is why it is said that it resembled the mosque. When the Muslim used to pray, they used to look towards the west side, and that is why the throne, the pedestal was placed here in the left side, so that it depict the God. The king depict the God. It represents the God on earth, and it was suggested by these architectural features. The connection between the royal justice and the imperial court was emphasized by Shah Jahan in his newly constructed court in the Red Fort at Delhi. Behind the emperor's throne, now if this is the emperor's throne, so behind this throne, there was a series of Petra Dura. Petra Dura is the colorful stone embedded. Colorful stones embedded, it inlaid, and it depicted the legendary Greek god Orpheus playing the lute. There was a Greek god Orpheus. It was said that when he played the lute, even the monster used to get calm. So the Petra Dura, which was placed behind the throne of the king, it depicted that the king, everyone is equal in front of the king. Each and every person will be treated equally in front of the king, and each and every person have to be calm. So they compared that situation with the Greek god Orpheus, who used to play his lute. In the early years of his reign, Shah Jahan's capital was at Agra. Right. So a city where the nobility had constructed their homes on the banks of river Yamuna. So when we talk about the construction of these Chahar Bagh, so earlier what used to happen? Earlier the nobility, means the people during Shah Jahan's reign, they used to construct their home near the river Yamuna. Means if suppose this is the river Yamuna flowing, here are peoples, the nobilities are living, like this area is given to the nobility, right? And then they have the Char Baghs also over here. Now these were set in the midst of formal gardens constructed in the Char Bagh format. The Char Bagh garden also have a variation that historians describe as riverfront garden. Since I told you that the nobility used to live here in front of the river Yamuna, so and there were gardens also. So the Chahar Bagh was also known as, there was a variation of Chahar Bagh which was also known as a riverfront garden. But now later on how it changed, Shah Jahan adapted the riverfront garden in the layout of Taj Mahal. If you see the Taj Mahal, the Yamuna river is flowing over there, and then it also have the Chahar Bagh. So he adapted that in the Taj Mahal. It is the grandest architectural accomplishment of his reign. Now here the white marble which is used in Taj Mahal is mausoleum. It was placed by the terrace in the edge of the river, and garden was to its south. Shah Jahan developed this architectural form as a means to control the access that nobles had to the river. Now see, when the capital city was Agra, at that time the nobles had the right to live here in front of the river. But talking about the other capital city, Shahjahanabad, during Shah Jahan's reign, when he went to the Shahjahanabad, then things changed, the situation changes. Now Shah Jahan wanted the right in the river. Now he didn't wanted all the nobility to have the right to access that river. So the imperial palace which he constructed, it was commanded the riverfront, and only specially favored nobles, they used, like his eldest son Dara Shikoh, were given the access to the river. All others had to construct their homes in the city away from the river Yamuna. So in Agra, people had the access to river Yamuna, but when he went the capital city in Shahjahanabad, he didn't allow people to get access on the river Yamuna. He took the access himself, and only the person, his special nobles like his eldest son, only the access was given to these kind of people whom he wanted to give the access. Other nobles he wanted to stay away from the river, to construct their homes away from the river Yamuna. Okay. Now talking about the region and empire. As construction activity increased between the 8th and the 18th century, so much of construction was going on. So there was also a considerable sharing of the ideas. Suppose if my house has been constructed, so wherever I'll go, I'll see for the things which I want in my house. I'll look at the windows of other people's house, the doors, or maybe I go to a hotel, I like something, so I'll try to implement that thing in my house construction. So this is what sharing of ideas. So region and empire, in this topic we will read about how the people, the kings, the kingdoms, they used to share the ideas of other, linked up with other kings and kingdoms, taken the ideas of their construction and implemented in their construction as well. Now, since we have talked that during the 8th and the 18th century, so much of construction was done, there was considerable sharing of ideas across the regions. The tradition of one region were adopted by another. So, whatever buildings were constructed in one region, the other region which is near to that region was adopting that kind of construction in their region as well. For example, if we take example of Vijayanagar, see here in the map, in Vijayanagar the elephant stables were influenced by the architecture in Bijapur and Golconda. See, if we see, look at the south area, this is Vijayanagar. Earlier it was Chola dynasty were there, and after Cholas Vijayanagar came. And this Vijayanagar, the elephant stables, the place where elephants were kept, because earlier the source of their transport was elephants. So the place where like you park your vehicles, they used to park the elephants. So the elephant stable, it was influenced by the architectural form in Bijapur and Golconda. This is Vijayanagara, this is Bijapur, this is Golconda. So see, they are the small places, but they have taken the architectural idea from these places, Bijapur and Golconda. So these were the things which used to take place, that the ideas were shared from one region to another, and people were implementing the other's idea of construction to their construction. Another example of this is in Vrindavan, near Mathura. Temples were constructed in architectural styles that were very similar to the Mughal palaces in Fatehpur Sikri. So in Vrindavan also there are temples whose architectural style is similar to that of the Mughal emperor, the Mughal palaces which are in Fatehpur Sikri. So they both have the similar architectural styles. The creation of large empire that brought different region under the rule helped in this cross fertilization of artistic form and architectural styles. The Mughal rulers were particularly skilled in adapting regional architectural style in the construction of their own building. So Mughals were very skilled in copying the architectural forms. Now even though the authority of the Mughal rulers waned in 18th century, after the 18th century Mughal rule was not so much in influence, so even after 18th century people adapted their way of construction, building construction. They adapted their way of building construction, and even they were not ruling, but the construction, the architectural style development which was there in the Mughal period, that continued and it was adopted by the other rulers who ruled after their own kingdom. Now let's come to our last topic, that is churches that touches the sky. Now in all these we were reading about the temples, the mosques, the tanks. Now talking about the churches, churches were not the part of that Mughal time period. It will come when the British will enter, but we must knew some points about these churches of that time, what happened and how these churches, what was the architectural, what was important architectural form which took place at that time was. From the 12th century onwards, attempts began in France to build churches that were taller and lighter than earlier buildings. It was not that before 12th century there were no churches. Churches were there, but after the 12th century when France started building up these churches, what happened then was, when the France started building up these churches were more taller and they were lighter than the previous ones. And the architectural style was known as the Gothic style. So the churches now which were after the 12th century, the churches were constructed and the construction was in Gothic style, which was basically in Europe. Then France adapted that style. Now in this time when the churches were building up, the buildings were taller and lighter, and pointed arches were also there. You remember in the beginning of the chapter when we were talking about the arches, so we talked about that there were the technology which changed, the development which came in the construction of arches. Earlier it was constructed in corbel manner. I have told you in previous video also. Suppose these are the two pillars. This was the corbel architectural form, and then the development came, and then the arches were made like this. So if you see, these arches are making a curve. Okay, but if we talk about these churches, the top of these churches, the arches were made like this. Pointed arches were made. Then they were not having these curved arches. So the arches were made pointed, and the glass which was used in making of these churches, in construction of these churches, they were painted. Stained glass means painted glass. Colorful glasses were there. Painted with scenes drawing from Bible and had flying buttresses. Now inside the church there were paintings. Those paintings came from the scenes from the Bibles, their holy book of the Christians. So the scenes were there taken from the Bible, and these scenes were drawn inside the churches, and they were also having flying buttresses. Buttresses means buttresses is also like a column. Like we have columns in the churches, there were flying buttresses means this kind of thing which connected two pillars. These are the flying buttresses, type of column which connected the two pillars. So during that time flying buttresses were also there. Tall spires and bell towers which were visible from a distance were added to the church. Very tall towers were made of bell shaped. It was also visible from a far distance. Means if somebody is standing so far away from the church, it was visible to that person that yes, there is a church near it, because it was constructed so tall. One of the best known example of this architectural style is the Church of Notre Dame in Paris, which was constructed through several decades in the 12th and the 13th century. So this was the construction of the churches. That is why the heading itself says churches that touches the skies. Means it was made so taller that it seems that it touches the sky. That's all. We finished up with the chapter. Thank you.